Right now, someone earning twice what their parents earned at the same age can still feel like they're falling behind. Think about that for a moment. A generation ago, the path to a comfortable life seemed relatively simple. Get an education, find a stable job, buy a home, raise a family, save for retirement. It wasn't easy, but for millions of people, it felt possible. Today, something feels different. People are working hard. Many are earning more money than ever before. Yet, everywhere you look, people are asking the same question. Why does it feel like there's never enough? Why does every raise seem to disappear? Why does life feel more expensive, more stressful, and somehow less secure than it did just a few decades ago? Most people assume they already know the answer. Inflation. And while inflation is certainly part of the story, it is far from the whole story. Because what happened over the last several decades goes much deeper than rising prices. In fact, one of the biggest reasons people feel broke today has almost nothing to do with how much money they earn. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. The story begins with something economists rarely talk about: expectations. For most of human history, people compared themselves to a relatively small group of individuals: their neighbors, their coworkers, their friends, their family members. Success was local. If your family had a stable home, food on the table, and enough money for occasional vacations, you were probably doing pretty well. Today, that entire system has changed. Every morning, millions of people wake up and immediately begin comparing their lives to the most successful people on the planet. Not intentionally, not consciously, but it happens anyway. Through social media, through news headlines, through YouTube, through endless streams of carefully curated success stories. Think about it. A person earning $100,000 a year might objectively be doing better than most people in the world. Yet that same person can feel financially inadequate after spending 10 minutes online. Because the internet has created something previous generations never experienced: unlimited comparison. And here's the surprising part. The human brain was never designed for this. Psychologists have long understood that happiness is often relative rather than absolute. People don't simply ask, "How much do I have?" They ask, "How much do I have compared to everyone else?" The problem is that today, everyone else includes billionaires, celebrities, influencers, entrepreneurs, and people presenting the absolute best moments of their lives. Suddenly, what once felt comfortable begins to feel insufficient. And that's only the first layer of the story. Because even if social media disappeared tomorrow, millions of Americans would still feel financially squeezed. The next reason explains why. For decades, wages increased, but so did something else: the cost of necessities. Not luxury items, not televisions, not smartphones, the things people genuinely need: housing, healthcare, education, insurance, childcare, food. These categories make up a large portion of household budgets, and unlike luxury purchases, they aren't optional. You can postpone buying a new television. You cannot postpone paying rent. You can skip upgrading your phone. You cannot skip healthcare. This is where many people began feeling trapped. Because while incomes rose over time, many of life's most important expenses rose even faster. A young family buying their first home today often faces a very different reality than previous generations. Home prices have increased dramatically in many regions. Mortgage payments have grown larger. Down payments have become harder to save. For many people, housing alone consumes a significant percentage of monthly income. And when one expense starts taking a bigger piece of the pie, everything else becomes harder. Saving becomes harder. Investing becomes harder. Building wealth becomes harder. But that's not the strangest part. Even when people manage to increase their income, many discover something frustrating. Their lifestyle expands right alongside it. Economists call this lifestyle inflation. Most people simply call it life. Imagine receiving a substantial raise. At first, it feels exciting. You have more money, more flexibility, more options. But slowly, things change. Maybe you move into a nicer neighborhood. Maybe you upgrade your vehicle. Maybe you start dining out more often. Maybe your subscription services multiply. None of these decisions seem unreasonable on their own. Yet over time, your expenses quietly rise to match your income. And suddenly, the raise that once felt significant barely feels noticeable. This creates a cycle that affects millions of people. Earn more, spend more, feel exactly the same. Or sometimes even worse. And that's where things become interesting. Because being wealthy and feeling wealthy are not always the same thing. A person earning $200,000 a year can feel financially stressed. A person earning far less can feel financially secure. The difference often comes down to expectations, obligations, and lifestyle choices. But there is another force quietly shaping this entire situation: debt. For many households, debt has become a permanent part of modern life. Mortgages, student loans, auto loans, credit cards, personal loans, buy now, pay later services. Debt allows people to enjoy tomorrow's lifestyle today. But eventually, tomorrow arrives. And when it does, monthly payments begin competing with future goals. Imagine trying to save for retirement while simultaneously paying off student loans, a mortgage, car payments, and credit card balances. Many people aren't just paying for their current life, they're paying for decisions made years ago. This creates a feeling of constantly running in place, working harder, earning more, yet never fully catching up. And here's something most people don't realize. Financial stress isn't always caused by a lack of money. Sometimes it's caused by uncertainty. Humans can tolerate difficult situations surprisingly well when they feel confident about the future. What creates anxiety is uncertainty. Not knowing whether housing will become more affordable. Not knowing whether retirement savings will be enough. Not knowing how healthcare costs will evolve. Not knowing what the economy will look like 5 years from now. That uncertainty creates pressure, and pressure changes how people perceive their finances. Even people with stable incomes can feel broke if they don't feel secure. Which brings us to perhaps the biggest shift of all: the disappearance of financial breathing room. Many previous generations lived with fewer choices, fewer subscriptions, fewer services, fewer financial commitments. Modern life offers incredible convenience, but convenience often comes with recurring costs. Streaming services, software subscriptions, delivery fees, membership programs, monthly payments that seem small individually, but significant collectively. The result is a financial system where money leaves accounts faster and more frequently than ever before. Most people don't experience one large financial shock. They experience hundreds of small financial drains. And over time, those drains add up. So why does everyone feel broke now? Because multiple forces are colliding at the same time. Higher expectations, unlimited comparison, rising essential costs, lifestyle inflation, debt obligations, financial uncertainty, and the gradual disappearance of financial breathing room. None of these factors alone explain the problem. Together, they create the feeling millions of people are experiencing. A feeling that, no matter how hard they work, they can never quite get ahead. But there is some good news. Understanding the problem is the first step toward escaping it. Because once you recognize the forces competing for your money, attention, and expectations, you begin making decisions more intentionally. You stop comparing your life to people you'll never meet. You focus on building genuine financial security instead of chasing appearances. You recognize the difference between looking wealthy and becoming wealthy. And perhaps most importantly, you realize that feeling behind doesn't necessarily mean you are behind. It often means you're measuring your progress against impossible standards. The reality is that millions of people feel exactly the same way. Not because they're failing, but because the rules of modern life have changed. And once you understand those new rules, you can start playing a different game. If there's one lesson to take away from all of this, it's that financial success isn't just about how much money you make. It's about how you think about money, how you manage expectations, and how you protect your future from the forces constantly competing for it. And if you found this perspective helpful, consider subscribing for more insights into money, wealth, and the hidden forces shaping modern life.